On a late winter afternoon, heavy snow covered the entire mountain road, turning everything white and silent. The wind was sharp and cold, pushing the snow across the empty path where no cars were able to pass anymore. In the middle of that harsh weather, an elderly woman with curly gray hair, wrapped in a thick coat and a knitted scarf, suddenly stopped when she noticed someone sitting in the snow. It was a young woman, barely able to hold herself upright. Her face was pale from the cold, and a small cut on her cheek showed she had gone through something difficult before ending up there. She clutched her pregnant belly with both hands, trying to keep warm as her body trembled uncontrollably. Snow had already gathered on her shoulders and coat, making her look even more fragile. The elderly woman immediately knelt beside her, brushing the snow away from the girl's clothing. Her voice was calm but firm, the kind of voice that could steady someone who felt like giving up. "You're safe with me," she said gently. She reached for the girl's freezing hands, trying to give her some warmth and comfort. The young woman looked at her with fear mixed with exhaustion, but the presence of the older woman seemed to bring her a small sense of relief. In that moment, with the snowstorm growing stronger around them, the lives of these two strangers crossed in the most unexpected way. The elderly woman understood immediately: if she didn't act fast, both the girl and the baby she carried might not survive the storm. And that is where the story begins. The elderly woman tightened her grip on the girl's hands, helping her rise slowly from the snow. The young woman struggled to stand, her legs shaking from exhaustion and the weight of her pregnancy. The wind grew stronger, pushing against them with every step, and the cold bit deeply into their skin. The older woman knew that staying outside any longer would put both the girl and her unborn child in serious danger. "Lean on me," the woman said softly. "My cabin is just up ahead." In the distance, a warm yellow light glowed from a small wooden cabin, barely visible through the curtain of falling snow. To the girl, it looked like the only hope she had left. They moved carefully, one slow step at a time. The snow was thick, swallowing their feet with each movement. The young woman clung to the elderly woman's arm, breathing heavily as she tried to keep herself steady. Every now and then, she paused, gripping her belly when a wave of discomfort hit her. The older woman didn't rush her. She simply waited, steady and patient, making sure the girl could continue. The wind howled around them, drowning out almost every other sound. The older woman kept glancing at the girl's face, checking for signs of fainting. The girl's lips were turning blue, and her hands were trembling violently from the cold. Still, she forced herself forward, guided by the warmth of the woman's voice and the promise of safety just ahead. After what felt like a long and difficult walk, they finally reached the cabin door. The elderly woman quickly pushed it open, letting a wave of heat spill out from the fireplace inside. The sudden warmth made the girl's knees buckle, but the woman caught her before she fell. "Come in, dear," the elderly woman said as she guided her inside. She led the girl to a chair near the fire and wrapped a thick blanket around her shoulders. The girl closed her eyes for a moment, breathing out a shaky sigh as the warmth began to ease the cold that had settled deep in her bones. The older woman went back to close the door, making sure no wind could enter. When she returned to the girl's side, she spoke gently, her voice steady and reassuring. "You're safe now, just rest. We'll take care of everything from here." And for the first time since the storm began, the girl allowed herself to feel a little hope. The warmth of the cabin slowly began to loosen the tension in the young woman's body. She held the blanket tightly around herself as her hands finally stopped shaking. The elderly woman watched her closely, making sure she was comfortable, then moved toward the small kitchen area beside the fireplace. "I'll make something warm for you," she said. Her voice carried the calm confidence of someone who had been through many hard winters. She heated a kettle on the stove, the gentle hiss of water slowly filling the quiet room. Meanwhile, the girl kept her hands on her belly, feeling a faint movement from the baby. It seemed like even the child inside her was relieved to be in a place that felt safe. When the water was ready, the elderly woman handed her a mug of hot chocolate. "Drink slowly. You've been out there too long." The girl took a small sip, and for the first time since she was found in the snow, a little color began to return to her cheeks. The older woman then pulled a small stool closer to the girl, sitting down so they were eye level. She didn't push, but her expression carried gentle concern. "Can you tell me your name?" she asked. The girl hesitated before whispering, "My name is Lily." "That's a beautiful name," the woman replied. "I'm Margaret. You're safe here, Lily." Lily nodded, though her eyes drifted downward as if she wasn't sure how much she should share. Margaret noticed the hesitation but didn't pressure her. Instead, she checked the girl's hands, her face, and then carefully looked at her belly. The girl winced slightly, but there was no sign of immediate danger, just exhaustion. "You're pregnant? How far along?" Margaret asked gently. "Almost 8 months," Lily answered. Her voice cracked a little, revealing how overwhelmed she truly was. Margaret reached out and placed a steadying hand on her shoulder. "You must have been out there for hours. What happened to you?" Lily took another deep breath, clutching the blanket tighter. The fire crackled softly behind them, giving her a moment to gather herself. Finally, she whispered, "I didn't have anywhere else to go." Margaret didn't interrupt. She simply waited, patient and kind, giving Lily the space to speak when she was ready. For the first time, Lily felt like someone might truly listen. The fire crackled softly in the background as Lily stared into the steam rising from her mug. Margaret waited patiently, knowing the girl needed time to find her words. The warmth of the cabin, combined with the older woman's gentle presence, finally seemed to give Lily the courage to speak. "I wasn't planning to be out there," Lily began quietly. I was trying to walk to the town on the other side of the ridge." Her voice trembled, not from the cold anymore, but from everything she had been holding inside. Margaret leaned in just a little, listening without interrupting. "My family didn't want me anymore," Lily continued. "They said I ruined everything when I got pregnant." She swallowed hard, fingers tightening around the blanket. "I thought they would calm down, but instead they kicked me out last week." Margaret's eyes softened, but she stayed silent, allowing Lily to guide her own story. "I tried staying with a friend for a few days," Lily said, "but her parents didn't want me there either. So I started walking. I thought I could reach the town before the storm got bad." She shook her head slowly. "I didn't realize how far it really was." Another deep breath, another pause. "Then a car drove past me. I thought maybe they would stop. But they didn't." Lily's voice cracked again. "When the snow got too heavy, I fell. I don't know how long I was lying there before you found me." Margaret finally spoke, her voice calm and steady. "You've gone through all of this alone?" Lily nodded, wiping a tear quickly with the edge of the blanket. "I didn't want to burden anyone," Lily whispered. "I thought if I could just reach the town, maybe I could find help. Maybe someone would give me a chance." Margaret reached out and gently placed her hand over Lily's. "You are not a burden," she said, her tone firm but kind. "You are carrying a child. That alone means your life matters, and his or hers, too." Lily looked up, surprised by the sincerity in Margaret's eyes. "You're safe now," Margaret repeated. "You're not alone here." For the first time in days, Lily felt her chest loosen. The storm outside continued to rage, but inside the cabin, the walls felt steady, warm, and protective, almost like the home she had wished for but never had. She whispered, barely audible, "Thank you for stopping." Margaret squeezed her hand gently. "I'm glad I did." The room fell quiet after Lily finished speaking, the only sounds coming from the fire and the wind brushing against the cabin walls. Margaret kept her hand on Lily's for a moment longer, giving her space to breathe after revealing so much. Then, with a slow exhale, she spoke in a tone that carried both warmth and a quiet sorrow. "You know," Margaret began softly, "I once had a daughter around your age." Lily looked up, surprised. Margaret's eyes were fixed on the flames, their reflection dancing across the pain she had long kept hidden. "She was young, full of life," Margaret continued, "and she was also pregnant, much earlier than she had planned." Her voice wavered slightly, but she steadied herself. It wasn't easy for her. She didn't feel supported. She felt alone, just like you. Lily's expression softened, sensing the weight behind those words. Margaret clasped her hands together gently, as if holding something fragile. One winter, she was driving home during a storm. The roads were icy. There was an accident. She paused, taking a slow breath before finishing. "I lost her, and the baby." Lily's eyes widened, and for a moment she forgot her own troubles. "I'm so sorry," she whispered. Margaret nodded, accepting the sympathy but not dwelling on it. After that, I promised myself that if I ever saw someone going through what she went through, I wouldn't look away. I wouldn't leave them alone in the storm. Her words carried deep, quiet conviction, not dramatic, simply the truth of a promise she had lived with for years. Lily looked down, clutching the blanket tighter. "I didn't know. I didn't expect anyone to help me." "I know," Margaret replied gently, "but sometimes help comes from places we never imagine. You didn't end up at my cabin by accident." She leaned forward, placing a reassuring hand on Lily's shoulder. "You and your baby deserve safety. You deserve care. As long as you're here, that's exactly what you'll have." Lily blinked back tears, her voice trembling. "Why would you do all this for me?" Margaret smiled, a small, tired, but sincere smile. "Because someone should have done it for my daughter. And because you remind me that even in storms, there are still chances to do what's right." The fire crackled again, filling the silence with gentle warmth. For the first time since arriving at the cabin, Lily allowed herself to lean back and breathe without fear. And Margaret knew, she wasn't saving just one life. She was keeping a promise she'd carried in her heart for years. The night deepened, and the wind outside grew even louder, shaking the small cabin every few minutes. Lily sat quietly near the fire, wrapped in the blanket Margaret had given her. Although the warmth helped, she couldn't hide the discomfort building in her lower back. She shifted slightly, hoping it would ease, but the pain only grew sharper. Margaret noticed immediately. "Are you all right?" she asked, leaning closer. Lily tried to smile, but the strain showed on her face. "I think it's just everything catching up to me," she said, but when she placed a hand on her belly, her fingers trembled. Margaret didn't panic, but her concern deepened. "Let's make you more comfortable," she said gently. She helped Lily move to the small sofa near the wall, propping pillows behind her back. The girl winced again as another wave of discomfort came, this time stronger than the last. "I don't think this is labor," Lily whispered, "but something doesn't feel right." Margaret nodded, already reaching for her old phone. "I'm going to call the doctor just in case." But after several attempts, all she heard was static and intermittent ringing. The storm had knocked out the lines again, something that happened often in their remote area. "They won't be able to reach us tonight," Margaret said softly, setting the phone down. "The roads are already closed. We're snowed in." Lily's eyes widened with worry. "Then what should I do?" "You rest," Margaret answered firmly, "and I'll watch over you. I've been through this before. You're not facing this night alone." The reassurance seemed to steady Lily's breathing. Still, the pain came and went in unpredictable waves. Margaret stayed right beside her, placing a warm compress on her back and keeping her hydrated. Every few minutes, she checked Lily's color, her breathing, and the baby's movements. Outside, the storm raged without pause. The windows rattled, and snow piled high against the door, sealing them inside. But inside the cabin, Margaret kept the fire going, refusing to let the cold creep anywhere near the frightened girl resting under her care. Hours passed slowly. Sometimes Lily dozed off for a few minutes, only to wake when another sharp discomfort hit her. Each time, Margaret was right there, holding her hand, speaking calmly, reminding her she was safe. By the middle of the night, Lily whispered, "Thank you. I don't think I would have made it out there." Margaret squeezed her hand gently. "You're here now. That's what matters." And though neither of them knew what the storm would bring by morning, they faced the long night together, one woman keeping watch, and one girl finally learning what it felt like not to be abandoned. By the time the first light of morning touched the sky, the storm had finally begun to quiet. The wind softened to a gentle whistle, and the heavy pounding of snow against the cabin walls faded into silence. Margaret, who had stayed awake most of the night, looked over at Lily resting on the sofa. The girl's breathing was steadier now, and the worst of the discomfort seemed to have subsided. Snow was piled high outside the windows, but the visibility was clearer. Margaret stood slowly, stretched her tired shoulders, and checked the phone again. This time, a signal flickered back to life. She wasted no time calling the local doctor, explaining the situation with urgency but also with the relief that Lily was still stable. It took nearly an hour for the doctor to reach the cabin. navigating the narrow road with chains on his tires. When he finally arrived, he brushed the snow off his coat before stepping inside. His face softened immediately when he saw Lily sitting upright, wrapped in a blanket but clearly exhausted. "Let's take a look at you," he said gently. Lily nodded, though she looked nervous. Margaret stayed close, taking a seat beside her while the doctor examined her carefully, checking her heartbeat, her temperature, her breathing, and the baby's movements. Lily winced a little during the evaluation, but she remained calm with Margaret holding her hand. After several minutes, the doctor sat back with a reassuring smile. "You and the baby are okay," he said. "What you experienced last night was likely stress and strain from the cold and exhaustion. You're not in labor, and the baby seems strong." Lily let out a breath she didn't realize she'd been holding. Her shoulders relaxed for the first time since the storm began. Margaret closed her eyes briefly, relieved. The doctor looked at them both. "She'll need rest, warmth, and proper meals for the next few days. But she's safe. You did the right thing bringing her here." Once he left, Lily turned toward Margaret, her eyes filling with quiet gratitude. "I don't know how to thank you," she said softly. "If you hadn't found me, I don't know what would have happened." Margaret shook her head gently. "You don't owe me anything, Lily. I'm just glad you're safe." Tears gathered in Lily's eyes. Not from fear this time, but from the overwhelming relief of knowing she and her baby had made it through the night. The morning light poured gently through the window, casting a soft glow over the cabin, a symbol of calm after the storm. For the first time in a long while, Lily felt like she had a chance at a new beginning. And sitting beside her, Margaret knew she was exactly where she needed to be. Years passed after that winter storm, and Lily's life slowly began to take shape again. With time, she found a small job in town, working part-time at a bakery that welcomed her without judgment. Her son, whom she named Noah, grew into a cheerful little boy with bright eyes and a smile that reminded her every day why she kept fighting. Though their life wasn't luxurious, it was steady, warm, and filled with small victories Lily once thought she would never experience. She rented a modest apartment near the town center. It wasn't much, but it was safe, and it gave Noah the room he needed to play and learn. Lily worked hard, sometimes more than she thought she could manage, but she carried a quiet strength that came from surviving one of the hardest nights of her life. And no matter how busy life became, Margaret was never far from her thoughts. Every winter, when the first snow fell, Lily would pause and glance out the window, remembering the elderly woman who had saved her and her unborn child without asking for anything in return. She sent letters to Margaret occasionally, updating her about Noah's milestones, his first steps, his first words, and how grateful she still was. Sometimes she visited during the warmer months, bringing fresh bread or small gifts Noah had made. Each visit was gentle and warm. Margaret aged gracefully, her hair turning whiter, her hands becoming slower, but her smile remained the same, steady and comforting. Whenever Lily and Noah appeared at her door, Margaret greeted them with an embrace that felt like home. But life continued to change. Lily eventually took on a full-time position at the bakery, and Noah started preschool. Days passed quickly, then weeks, then years. Responsibilities piled up, bills needed to be paid. Noah needed help with schoolwork. And like many young mothers, Lily found herself constantly balancing work, parenting, and the exhaustion that came with both. Even so, she never forgot Margaret. She planned to visit again soon. Maybe during the holidays when the bakery slowed down, or perhaps when Noah had a break from school. She kept telling herself she would make time. But sometimes, life has a way of passing faster than we expect. And as a new winter approached, with snow beginning to fall once again, Lily had no idea that the woman who once saved her life would soon need her more than ever. Winter came earlier than expected that year. Snow covered the mountain roads in a thick white blanket, and temperatures dropped quickly over the course of only a few days. Margaret, now older and moving more slowly than before, prepared her cabin for another long season. She stacked firewood by the door, checked the windows for drafts, and shoveled the small path that led to her mailbox. Even simple tasks felt heavier now, but she refused to let the cold stop her. One morning, after a fresh layer of snow fell overnight, Margaret stepped outside to clear the walkway again. The sky was gray, and the air was biting cold. She took careful steps, as she always did, but the path had iced over beneath the new snow. She didn't notice the thin sheet of ice until her boots slipped forward unexpectedly. In an instant, she lost her balance. Margaret fell hard onto the ground, the impact knocking the wind out of her. Pain shot through her hip and lower back, leaving her unable to move without sharp, stabbing aches. She tried gripping the snow to pull herself up, but her strength failed her. The cold began to seep into her coat and gloves as she lay there, helpless. She called out once, hoping a neighbor might hear, but her cabin was isolated, far from the nearest home. Her voice disappeared into the quiet morning air. The mailbox stood only a few feet away, but it felt like miles. Margaret tried again to lift herself, but the pain was too intense. She lay there breathing heavily, her body trembling from both the injury and the freezing ground beneath her. Snowflakes drifted down onto her coat and hair, collecting the way they once had on Lily the night she found her. Time passed slowly. 10 minutes felt like an hour. The cold grew sharper. Margaret's breaths became shorter and more uneven. She looked toward the cabin door, wishing she could reach it, wishing someone knew she needed help. For the first time in many years, she felt truly alone. The road leading up to the cabin was quiet. No cars, no footsteps, no signs that anyone would be passing by. She closed her eyes for a moment, whispering a small prayer that someone, anyone, might come before it was too late. What Margaret did not know was that fate had already begun to shift. Lily, the young woman whose life she saved years before, happened to be traveling near the mountain that very day, hoping to finally visit again after months of being too busy. And the path Lily chose would lead her directly to the woman who once pulled her out of the snow. Lily had been thinking about Margaret for weeks. Work had kept her busy, and Noah's school schedule made it hard to plan a visit. But something about the first snowfall of the year pushed her to try anyway. On her day off, she packed a small basket with fresh bread from the bakery and bundled Noah into the car for a surprise trip to the mountains. As she drove up the familiar road, the snow grew deeper, and the air turned colder. She took the curves slowly, remembering how dangerous the path could be in winter. When the cabin finally came into view through the trees, she smiled, until something on the ground made her hit the brakes. A figure was lying near the mailbox. "Mom, what's that?" Noah whispered from the backseat. Lily's heart dropped. She jumped out of the car without thinking, sprinting through the snow. As she got closer, recognition hit her like a shock. "Margaret," she cried. The elderly woman's eyes fluttered weakly at the sound of her voice. She was shivering, her coat dusted with snow, her breath shallow. Lily fell to her knees beside her, tears instantly filling her eyes. I'm here, you're not alone." Margaret tried to speak, but her voice was faint. "Lily, you came?" "Of course I came," Lily said, gripping her hand tightly. "You saved my life once. Now it's my turn." Without wasting time, she pulled out her phone and dialed emergency services, giving the cabin's location as precisely as she could. While waiting, she kept Margaret conscious, rubbing her arms, wrapping her in Noah's spare blanket, and talking to her gently to keep her awake. Noah ran over and stood beside them, worry filling his young face. "Is she going to be okay, Mom?" "Yes," Lily said firmly. "We're going to help her, just like she helped us." Minutes later, the faint wail of sirens echoed through the trees. Rescue workers lifted Margaret carefully onto a stretcher and carried her toward the ambulance. Lily never let go of her hand until the very last moment. At the hospital, doctors confirmed what Lily had feared. Margaret had suffered a bad fall and severe cold exposure. But thanks to Lily finding her in time, she would recover. When Margaret finally woke in a warm hospital room, the first thing she saw was Lily sitting beside her, holding Noah on her lap. The sight brought a tear to her eye. "You saved me," Margaret whispered. Lily smiled through her tears. "You saved me first. I'll never forget that." Margaret reached out and took Noah's small hand. "Looks like we've come full circle, haven't we?" And in that quiet room, filled with warmth instead of snow, their story found the ending it had always been leading toward. An ending built on kindness, gratitude, and a bond that lasted far beyond the storm.